We're currently interviewing Vince Boehm from the Developmental Disabilities Council. Vince, tell us where you grew up and where you live now.
Yes, I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I live in Wilmington area now. And we've been here almost enough time to be considered native-born Delawareans. We've been here for more than 35 years. So I think we could claim that title. Delaware's a crazy place because hardly anybody actually is born here.
So you came here through Boy Scouts, right?
Yes, I was a professional with the Boy Scouts. I worked basically in the Scout office, and I had charge of the exploring program. I think 5,600 kids spread over 4 counties.
Wow.
And so it was very, very busy job, and eventually things caught up with me, and I went bonkers one day, and it was a little bit of a rough situation.
So tell me about your activism.
Oh wow! It was about 8 years that I was spent in the hardcore stuff, and it turns out that mental health is a real mess, and it took a lot of doing, but I think we got together on it. One of my early things was the hunger strike in Pasadena, and that's quite historic in the consumer business, consumer end of things. It's about the first time that the people confronted the powers that be about some very serious things. And I didn't organize it. Another large consumer group. These are all consumers, by the way. They weren't anybody's mamas and daddies running the show. And we called a hunger strike, and we set it up in Pasadena, California. And that was about the first year I was on the council. I did that. And we had a lot of serious questions about things that were going on at the time. One of the things that we had, I think, 8 different demands that we wanted to be met. One of them was, of course, the fact that the drug companies were selling pills that claimed to prevent suicide when they weren't admitting that the pills might actually be causing suicide. Now this goes way back to the Prozac hearings in '92, but our hunger strike was in 2004, and it was the second one exploring that thing. And one of them, another consumer member that I know was actually a Holocaust survivor. It's a woman, and she lost a child lost her son to psychoactive drugs, and it was a horrendous experience on her, and that made her a real advocate. You know, when they talk to people, I eventually got involved with a lot of this type of thing, and we got a black box warning on all of the what they call the SSRI medications, which is the Prozacs and things. And then without any more to do, they also admitted that the antipsychotics were causing the same problem. And when the hunger strike lasted for 21 days, and out there I met one of the ladies that planned on testifying at the public comments period in the February 2004 hearing. And it was held in Bethesda, Maryland, which is a suburb of D.C. And I knew, I thought, well, heck, I'm only 100 miles away or so, and I'd like to go up and do that. And actually, I signed up to speak at it. It would have been historic. But I found they had real tight limits on who could come in and how much time, and the cutoff point of when they were going to. They only wanted a few people, and they got 65, and everybody had 3 minutes. But then, anyway, I yielded my time to a woman who had lost a child, and it was a bad thing. I'm not going to get into it. But it was a 9-year-old kid, and but anyway, getting back to my friend, she found out, you know, the gal in New York lost a child also. She found out she was running a mail list, and she found out, she got that the FDA was actually muzzling their safety officer. They wouldn't let him present his material at this hearing. So about a week, she was well connected. She had tipped off the what is it, Los Angeles Times about it, and they broke the story about a week or two before the thing. And they were between a rock and a hard place because they couldn't get this guy on and admit that they were wrong. But what the results of that first hearing is that they rescheduled another hearing on the same premise. I think it was August, 6 months later or so, and that's when they decided to black box warn the class of drugs that we were saying. And in that, in a black box warning, you'll notice if you get into the actual drug label, they call it, it's usually about 17 pages of fine print. But the first thing you see right up is, even above the name of the product, is things that they really want to get over, tell people about. And that black box warning on those medications, we actually, well, I'm not going to take full credit at that, but there was quite a few people that came to that hearing, wound up on a mailing list that I put out at the time of the hearing, and then for about 8 years or 9 years afterwards.
Wow. So, who were the people that came for the hunger strike, and why was it in Pasadena?
Well, hunger strike, yeah. We had a blind girl from Chicago. We had a Latino from New York City, myself. Fellow that was run the group, he was from the state of he was from Oregon. And let's see, I think I'm missing one. Oh, one Valley girl. She was local out there. A nice gal. And we decided to confront the powers that be, so forth. And we found out something very interesting about something like that. They weren't used to getting confrontations by a consumer group. We're supposed to be nice little people that sit back and say yes to everything, and hopefully potty trained, you know. But then when they got into that, they were a bit wild. It was a very, you know, the thing that Gandhi said, you know, first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, and then you win. It works. And we found out, I couldn't believe when we got that black box warning how actually we can make people pay attention to what our issues. And it was amazing, and you know, and it's a good thing. It's going on.
And what were the days like, those 21 days? What did you do all day?
Well, we had the first week was pretty busy. We had public. We had public sessions where we let people in and talked about what we were going to do and what we were doing, and they were well attended. In fact, we had a packed house every night. During the days, very little. We could get out and walk and go out of the building and everything. It was right on. It was right by 2 blocks west of the actual place where they have the Pasadena Rose Parade, the big main avenue there. And there was stuff to do, but we weren't exactly tourists or anything like that. Big deal would be go down to maybe the corner and get a soda or something, but no solid food. Our hunger strike, we didn't.
How did you happen to pick that church to host your strike?
One of the fellows that was involved with it was a member of the church, and we rented a building out back of the church for actually 3 weeks. I forget how that was done. I think maybe it was a friend of ours, the movement. It was a professional, I think, paid for that rental and stuff.
And was there a name for that particular movement?
It was called the Consumer Coalition. It's now called Mind Freedom, and it's still around. We lost our the guy that organized it. Well, he's still alive, but he had a serious accident and he's not involved anymore. And it was Mind Freedom. It was the name of the organization, and it's international.
And was that the year that it started, or did it exist before you did
Oh,
this?
yes. They were around for, it might have been 10 years before we did that. And I was in a conference up in Washington about the spring of that year, and I ran into a fellow that was by some chance from the same town as the guy that was running the Mind Freedom organization, David Oakes. And I said, "Hey, you know Dave Oakes?" And he says, "Yes." You know, and then he told me about the hunger strike, and I was pretty interested. He was going to go, but he decided not to. And he had a professional career, and he thought it was a state or something. He thought he'd be blackballed or something. There was an awful in that time. There was a tremendous amount of stuff like that going back. You know, not so much anymore.
How old were you in that time?
How was I? What?
How old were you then?
I was there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, were you 20? Were you 50?
Oh no, I was 63.
Yeah. So, had you been a protester in the 60s too?
Well, no, that's strange. That's a good question because I kind of missed the 60s. I was, and it was I was in the Army at that point and a few things like that. So I just missed some of the interesting parts, and thank goodness too, because I could have been in terrible shape for parts of it. Okay, on that.
At the end of 21 days, how did you feel?
Hungry.
Hungry.
Yeah. I got there's a lawyer friend of mine, Freedom. He was a member out there, and I remember him picking me up. Well, he picked me up at the airport to bring me to the place, and then he picked me up again to go out and get the plane to go home. And I remember we stopped in a steak restaurant, and I had, honest to God, I think about a 16-ounce or something. One of these, it was one of these chain restaurants. I don't remember which one, but yeah, I really made up for the 3 weeks of fasting.
And it didn't impact your health at all not to eat?
Yeah, it did, absolutely. A couple of weeks after that, I had a minor stroke.
Yeah.
Which was a rough deal. But
and was there much publicity about this?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Before, what happened is a couple of weeks before the strike, the person that was supposed to do the publicity, we found out did nothing, so I just threw it open to the group. And I knew a reporter on the Washington Post, and I got him in on the thing. And then, of course, he called also the Los Angeles Times, and so we got interviews and stuff like that. And it was crazy because when sitting there, we mostly answered the phones and stuff, and you pick up the phone and Lynn calling. No, I mean we really did cause an international thing. In fact, there were 40 other people that we know of around the world that were fasting along with us. So we got a front page. We made the front page of the Washington Post. We made we were on the cover of the Los Angeles Times Sunday, the Sunday supplement thing. And they covered it. And glad we had TV, radio. We did the interviews and stuff like that. We caused quite a sensation, considering, what was it, a half a dozen guys in a church building, but it was good. We had some. We also had some. We challenged the 3 different organizations: the APA, the psychiatrists, and NAMI, and the Surgeon General. We sent letters before that. We wanted questions asked. All we wanted was simple answers to, straight answers to simple questions. And they weren't able to do that. They referred us to a book. Now we had a scientific panel backing us up. So anything that was coming in, we had professionals look at the stuff over that they're saying. They sent us. They told us to read a book on psychiatry and how great it was. And we had, oh God, we had the guy that chaired the schizophrenia section of the American, or the National Mental Health thing, a big government deal, council or whatever they call it. And he was, he showed up, by the way, and gave a talk at one of our public things. He's out in California, but so we were pretty busy. I mean, and that was the jump off, because I did a lot of other research and a lot of other leadership. I offered leadership roles, and I assumed that, and but eventually through my little newsletter, which I put out only things that were in the mainstream news. I didn't put out the Mickey Mouse stuff. And if it wasn't in the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal or something, it wouldn't get printed, you know. But I just reprinted those and went to and send them out to email-wise. And I did that for darn near 9 years, and then I got sick. I had to get out of it. But in that era, as the group itself participated in 10 FDA hearings. We won all but one. No kidding. And the last one we did, we went to bat for the electroshock thing. The FDA wanted to bump the classification of electroshock machines, the amount of scrutiny and the amount of proof they have back to the level of what they would do with a wheelchair or something like that. And this stuff is terrible. I'm not going to get into it. But we even won. They had Kitty Dukakis was one of the people on the other side. She was just smart, and she wrote a book about it, or half a book on it. Yeah. So we beat her at that thing and prevented that classification. And that was about a half a dozen of my guys.
And Kitty Dukakis herself had some issues?
Oh yeah, she testified. But she testified in favor of the electroshock. And I won't get into it, I might even get it wrong, but she was there and testified.
And was it at the Supreme Court? Where was it?
What?
Where did you testify? At the Supreme Court? Where?
It was held like a court. I mean, you know, these FDA hearings, and we did pretty well there. And but we were used to winning by that time. But the first two that I went to, I never seen it happen even. And so that was part of what we did. And we also did things. We picketed at the White House at one point. That wasn't one of my list members set that up, and we had an interesting time. I'll say that.
Who was the president then?
Huh?
Who was the president of the United States then?
Oh, I think it was, oh gosh, I think Bill Clinton, I'm not sure. Maybe not. Oh, I don't know. In 2004, who was the president? I don't know. I think it was Bush, George G.W. Bush, yeah. But yeah, he was president. He didn't come out and shake hands or any of that stuff.
And not
but it was funny though. I mean, honest to God, I mean, they had the security up there. They had people hanging out of trees with telephone lit. I'm not putting this up. And then they rolled into a deal where it looked like a camera for news folks, And everybody got up and dutifully marched around in a circle out there. And we had about 50 people. And I realized it afterwards that I was just Secret Service checking. They checked out all the protesters.
How many protesters were there?
Oh, on that deal, we had about 50. We had the first kid that was shot at Columbine attended. We had a woman who was 12 years old, grandson got into serious problems at that point, and eventually was convicted and doing a life sentence. But we were working on that issue also. We worked on serious stuff. We did nothing nitty gritty.
So was the protest just signs, or?
Oh yeah. Well, so we had that, and we had. I don't know. We played to the press a little bit. We didn't get as much press with that because, they have constant protests in front of the White House, Lafayette Park. But so I don't. It's all bad. It's old news to Washington. Well, we got one, I think, in the New York Post, or Washington. No, it wasn't Washington Post. What's the other one? I forget when it is. It was the second largest newspaper. Anyway, we did well, and then after that, it went along. Were all kinds of stuff involved with the council. I was chaired their policy and law committee for about 10 years.
And that was in Dover?
Yeah, but we also did a bunch of traveling to conferences and things too.
So you were targeting state and federal officials?
Oh yeah. I was, we would go and meet with our representatives in Washington. And by the way, those guys were great to us, and so there's no problem. It was an interesting thing, and one of the things, when we look at the movement, the consumer movement at that time, they had a bunch of them that were working with the United Nations to develop this paper, the rights and privileges of the disabled people. I forget what the Convention on the Rights of Disabled People.
And tell me about Diamond State Advocacy.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we started meeting around 2002. There was a former organization, a consumer organization that fell apart, and I can't get into before that, and that kind of is what got me started. We would meet and discuss issues and sometimes take positions. I think one of the first positions that I remember is Delaware is one of the two states in the Union that still had laws concerning sterilization. And we fought that through the ACLU, and eventually they took that language out of the law. But again, I don't well, I'm not going to get into it. It's going to be, but it was a rough deal. And lots of the stuff that I got into was serious, deeply serious stuff. It wasn't a lot of, just odd stuff that we were unhappy about.
And your kids are all grown up, so you could fight, huh?
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's been interesting, and when I look back on what it was in, say, 2003 and what it is today in 2017, it's a difference of night and day. Just even stuff that would see things on the consumer thing. They were in a phase then that they would ignore us or ridicule us.
Tell me about the Bush's New Freedom Commission.
The which?
Bush's New Freedom Commission.
Oh yeah,
Wasn't
one of my good friends and list member, Dan Fisher, Dr. Dan Fisher, who's recovered schizophrenic, and again, that was one of the things that they used to tell us that you couldn't get well. And then they changed their mind when the New Freedom Commission came in. But it was 14 people, 14 psychiatrists that met to develop a plan for this day forward into the mental health field. And it seems like every president that comes along has a plan for something like that. But anyway, Dan was appointed, and he really did do a great job with that. And he's in Boston, and he's runs a large government-supported consumer organization. There's two of them in the country. One of them is in Philadelphia, and the other is and that, I'm just trying to think what they call it. I'm terrible with names anymore. But but he's been around for a long time, and I knew him. In fact, he even came to and testified in person to that shock treatment business. And he was the only psychiatrist that testified against shock. And but we won. But anyway, Dan was a neat guy, and I still consider him a good friend too. You see.
So, and what else did the New Freedom Commission accomplish?
You're telling New Freedom?
Is that what it's called? The Bush's New Freedom? Yeah.
New Freedom Commission? Yeah. That's debatable.
Oh, yeah, Bush.
But they set a lot of lofty goals and so forth. But I don't know if they actually accomplished much. I mean, it's politics, right? But it was an honor to be on it, and the best thing that came out of it was the admission that you can recover from mental problems.
Yeah.
And in other words, the thing is, just keep taking your pills, and you're going to take these till the day you die. They didn't happen to tell you that you die a little sooner than everybody else. By the studies that we have, 30, if you're in the public sector, there's 30 years short of a comparable person on the outside. Wow. In Medicaid or mental health.
Was that Bob Whitaker involved at all?
No, Bob, that's interesting. Bob, I met him at the International Center for Study for Psychology and Psychiatry. He just wrote a book called Mad in America, which really rocked some boats. And he was a medical writer and on a newspaper assignment for the Boston Globe. And he tackled a problem. The drug companies were testing some product, and they had to stop everybody with what they were doing, whatever pills, and let them sit for a couple of weeks before they went back in. And Bob thought that was terrible because he'd been told by the powers that be, mainly in the mamas and the papas types of advocacy groups, that the pills are just like insulin to a diabetic. So he went in with that thing, but then when he got into it, he realized that there was a problem, that it wasn't actually the case. And he found a couple of troubling different studies. He found one that had been done by the United Nations. In fact, I think it was two of them. They surveyed, I think it was 6 different countries. One of them was, 3 of them were first world countries, us and Russia and I think the UK. And then they 3 third world countries: India, Nigeria, and some country in Bolivia, maybe, I'm not sure. And they found out a strange thing, that the people who, in these third world countries didn't get very many expensive drugs, not hardly. And they found out that they had total recoveries going on in life, marrying, having children, working regular jobs and stuff like that. Well, we had to put everybody in a box, and it's an interesting story. And well, anyway, yeah. Bob found that out, and I met him, I think, in 2004 in New York. I was into the ISEP conference, the professional organization I joined. And I was, at the time, I was buying his books by the dozen, and we were running our little thing, my first state, Diamond State Advocates thing at the same time, and I wound up chairing that. But so I went to New York on that, for that conference, and it was pretty. I met a lot of interesting people, and I think probably at least 100 wound up subscribing to my newsletter. I mean, I had like 35 psychiatrists and well over 100 psychologists. Oh God, about 30 or 35 lawyers, and then the rest were just ordinary people that were mostly victims of the thing, and or parents of, or whatever. Interesting enough, in my professionals, I had some medical doctors also, regular ones, and one of them was a dentist. And I had to think about that Jack Nicholson thing, Little House of Horrors or whatever, that he played a dentist, and I just laughed, but I never met the guy. I also had a veterinarian too, but her father had been worked, I think, had a role in the National Institute of Medicine's mental health section, and so she was very good source for me. If I had a question or anything, I call her. Even if I had a question with a dog.
Tell me about Diamond State Advocates. Who were they, and how did you find them, and what did they do?
Well, they found me. I was involved with the Consumer Coalition, and I had a heart attack, and I had to leave that. That's late 90s. And so I got out of that, and then what happened, there was a leadership change in the coalition, and the new director just let it go, fall apart. Well, I'm going to get into it. But so they still had the money, and NAMI helped organize it. Or the guys.
What's NAMI?
National Association for Mental Illness. They're, well, I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, they wanted a consumer organization, so I chaired that for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
And
We
did that
finally
lead
dissolved
to
it.
coming on the council then? Or
Huh?
did that lead to coming on the council and doing?
Yeah, exactly. They called me up one day, and I didn't, I think it was Pat Michael. And I thought that the developmental disability thing was only for people with serious retardation, what do they call it now, problems. And no, I found out by definition, if you had any problems at all that are life-threatening in your first 22 years, you're actually considered, and not in something that isn't considering anything that would go away. And so there's a lot of us that didn't know that was going to go on.
Yeah.
But it was a kind of a game changer for me, because it got me involved with a lot of other disabilities and problems too, other than what I was doing with my own.
Were you working on ADA? Did you work on ADA?
No. Yeah, I was, as a matter of fact, I was, all I was in the ADA, we had an organization called SCADA, and I was elected treasurer, and I served as treasurer for a couple of years. But, and then that kind of fell apart at that point.
So, if you had a magic wand and you could change anything about this whole thing, what would you change? And how would you do it? Because you're the magician.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. My God, I think it comes to a few things that are really, really, really important. Self-determination, for one thing, okay? And empowerment. And just changing the public's attitude on things. I mean, we're the only disability in the world that we get vilified. And even in some cases, there were some laws that we couldn't marry, we couldn't own a gun, we couldn't vote, and you know, which is silly in a lot of ways. I mean, there's just a lot of preconceived notions as to what we can and we cannot do, or what limitations that we allegedly have. And by God, I've met people with mental health problems, and just about every status of the society. In fact, one of my good members was a woman who was a movie star a few years ago, and and of course she's very active in this too. But she was also a member of my group. But it was interesting and a lot of fun. But now I wound up. The only thing I do right now is I'm president of the local magic club, Delaware Knights of Magic. So.
We will get to that. If you could tell people one thing about yourself and about your experiences in your lifetime, what would it be? What would you want? A big article in the New York Times or your obituary, God forbid?
I think that would be the last thing I need is an article in the New York Times.
What do you want people to remember about you?
That's a great question. I was just a small part of a very large movement. I was happy to have facilitated a lot of things, organizing getting people out to go to FDA hearings. In fact, I remember one where they moved the suicide thing that was started, they had it at 18 and they moved it to 24, the danger area. And actually the FDA was holding a hearing on that, and we got it and done, but that's where they left it. They didn't look at the rest of the age groups. But anyway, that's, to really understand what, I just saw so much happening, and mostly positive over the years. I mean, my gosh, if we'd showed up to picket the White House that time, my God, we've been in dang psychiatric hospital before we even, your feet have been touched the ground, and
so now you
shot
can do
full of some kind of dope that you wouldn't even be sure what planet you're on, And but I seen that all that change because if you got to know you have to know what you're talking about. You can't just go out and rant and rave. So you always go on pretty firm ground. And then if you do get into a discussion, you've got some valid arguments. And I got into a lot of arguments over the years. My gosh. One time it was funny because I was testifying before the budget committee in the state of Delaware, and I was telling, I'm a magician, right? And I held up a dollar bill and I folded it and clicked, and the dollar bill was still intact, but it was shorter. And then I clicked that off, and I tell them, well, this is money you spend on this and that, and then finally, when you get down to the this is the money you spend on these consumers. They were listening, but there was that's just an old magic trick. It's old as the hills, but it got some attention, So I like to do. I would usually do a little bit of magic. At a meeting or something. Not a lot, but I used to go sit on so many councils and things and committees that once in a while I'd have something to show.
I think that's about it, but you were magical yourself, You did a lot of cool stuff in your life.
Oh, all right. I could, just for the heck of it, I could give you guys a sample of my magic. Now, we look at nothing in my hands, and of course nothing up my sleeve. down. Oh, God, abracadabra. Oh, my goodness, what do we got here? Oh, there you go. Check it out. That's real, isn't it?
Yep, it's real.
Okay. Let me just put this back in. And we're gonna pack it in there pretty good into my fist. And I found the best way to do it is just curl it around like that.
What should you do with that?
Anyway, no, I have a lot of fun with magic, and it's a good way. I don't normally just drag it around, you know, like I think it was I guess Hemingway had a line in one of his books, you know, somebody walked up to another person, you like card tricks? And she said no. So you just showed her 3. You know, I mean, you know, you can't just push it on to people like that.
But somehow there's an analogy there between magic and the changes that you've seen.
Oh, well, I don't know. When you're looking at public opinion, that's, well, you know, it's the first, the first suicide hearing I went, when I was just brand new at this, you look out into the parking lot, and it was like the OJ trial. All kinds of satellite, the whole parking lot full of satellite uplinks and microphones in the faces of the people I got to testify, 4, 5, 6. I don't remember what that was, but they got the message out to around the world. So you know, but if you have something stale like the White House thing, you're not going to get that much. But we did do a lot. I remember, you know, working on the convention for rights of people with disabilities, and it was kind of cool because I was sitting in the United Nations chamber, and about where you're sitting, there was that podium with Khrushchev found it. Shoe. I mean, wow! And here I am, you know, and that was interesting as heck. But I went up to 2 different situations like that up there in New York. And
see, you made magic.
Yeah, but it was, you know, it was funny, you know, because we had a good time with it too, and we made some terrific friends. So. But that type of thing was not happening. Consumer organization at that point, when I got into it, had been around for a few years, but they weren't getting the publicity, and you mentioned changing public attitudes. I don't know. It wasn't spontaneous either. It's just a change in people, I think, where, my God, they won't lock us up anymore for protesting something, you know. So that's interesting, and it was. It's been an amazing, interesting thing that we got involved with.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, but it was stuff that had to be done.